G'day, I'm Troy from Microsoft Australia Education, and welcome to our Introduction to the Inclusive Classroom, sponsored of course by Microsoft, but also by the National Disability Coordination Officer Program. So together we've made this video and series of webinars for you so that you can use these tools that you already have at your fingertips to better reach your students and to better hit educational outcomes and to help your students meet those educational outcomes as well. So let's jump right into episode 1, Introduction to the Inclusive Classroom. Now, the first thing I'm going to want to do is show you a video. It's a very short video, but it's just a nice video demonstrating some of the cool features that we have around Windows 10. Now, Windows 11 is coming soon, so at the end of this session, I'm going to show you a very brief video around Windows 11 as well. But let's jump straight into that video first, shall we?
We're making it easier for everyone to do more with Windows. Looking back, there are plenty of examples where making something possible for a person with a disability ended up making experiences better for everyone. Closed captions are a great example. Closed captions make it possible for people with hearing impairments to enjoy a video. They're also great for following a football game in a noisy restaurant or watching the news in a busy airport terminal. They're great for English language learners and students that want to get the most out of an online presentation or class. We're creating new experiences in Windows that have a similar story. We're making it easier for people with low vision to see and interact with Windows. The same features are great for people when they misplace their reading glasses or follow a presentation from across a large room.
Traditionally, when we design and engineer, we talk about personas and putting people into buckets. But people are unique. They have unique abilities. Sometimes those abilities will change, even day to day. For example, we know people that actually in the morning will use screen magnification software, and by the end of the day, their eyes are fatigued, and so they'll actually use screen reading software.
Space, Windows, 0, loading page, Windows 10, loading complete.
So we actually want to put people at the center of our design. An example of that is in ease of access. We have a lot of technology in there, and we don't want to use technical jargon. Instead, we use simple human language, like make text bigger. Also with that experience, it's really easy to build it to work for a lot of different people. For me, I actually enjoyed using it at 200%, twice as large. For other people, they just wanted to make their text a little bit bigger. So rather than making text bigger be an on or off switch, it actually has fine-grained control so that each person can make it work perfect for them. And that's what inclusive design is all about.
To really meet the goal to design and build products that are truly inclusive and human-centered, we work with a diverse set of users to deeply understand their needs and identify opportunities to improve their lives through the use of our technology. When designing and building our features, we conduct usability studies to really understand how our products are working. Our team also connects directly with customers at conferences for people with a wide range of abilities. We have two main goals. First is to help the community learn what's new in Windows and get feedback in how our products are currently working for them. Lastly, our team consults with industry experts and partners throughout our advisory boards who are great at giving us feedback on features that are working and those that could use some improvement. These active engagements keep us at the front lines of the information that is coming in, allowing us to constantly improve our customers' experience with accessible, intuitive technology.
A few years ago, I was at the National Federation of the Blind conference. I had parents of a 6-year-old who was blind ask me, how can we start teaching our daughter how to use a computer? At that point, all I could respond with was, we only have an online user guide. I was dissatisfied with that answer. I wanted to help create easy-to-use interactive content that could help anyone get started. This is one of the things that has influenced the work that we're doing on Narrator and Narrator Quick Start. We've already made so much progress.
Our Narrator team here at Microsoft is really looking at how we can improve the landscape for screen reader users when it comes to accessibility, but more importantly, usability and productivity. An example of where we are improving the landscape for screen reader users is our ability to be able to read information from an image automatically and giving a user information about that image.
Fetching image caption, a laptop computer sitting on top of a table.
A user can simply press a hotkey, and we use cognitive services here at Microsoft to be able to analyze that image and return useful information to a screen reader user.
Around Microsoft, we're known as the accessibility team, but internally, we've called ourselves the Input for Everyone team for some time. I've been in this space for about 11 years, and over the past 5 years, with Satya coming in and changing the mission statement of Microsoft to empowering every person to achieve more. It really has helped us expand the team. It's helped us really focus on what does it mean to make Microsoft products easier to use. And through that, we've been getting great feedback from social media, our NGO partners, and the Windows Insider program.
The impact of assistive technology is growing. We're making it possible for people with a broad range of disabilities to achieve their full potential with free, built-in solutions that are easy to discover, learn, and use. We're building Windows for each of us so that it's great for all of us.
Now, the other thing I want to point out to you is you can get my videos at aka.ms/TroyYT. That's aka.ms/TroyYT. This is my YouTube page, and I've collected a lot of my webinars over the years. I've got playlists around accessibility and inclusive learning, but I've also got playlists around other things as well, things specifically to higher ed, K to 12. So please jump in and have a look at that if you want to do a deeper dive into some of the things that we're showing you today. Now, our agenda is going to look like this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to unpack the Microsoft Inclusive Classroom, talk about how we define that at Microsoft. Then we're going to look at Universal Design for Learning, not a really deep dive into UDL, but just an introduction to UDL and what it's all about. Then we're going to talk about individualization, and I'm also going to introduce you to what's called ease of access. In Windows 10, it's called ease of access. In Windows 11, it's called accessibility, but nevertheless, it's very, very similar. So we'll jump in and have a look at that. And then lastly, I'm going to share some resources with you as well. Our mission at Microsoft is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So that is our actual mission statement. And I've underlined every person there because I really want to stress that it is a responsibility that we feel at Microsoft, right? So the idea of universal design, the idea of accessibility and making things more accessible to people is something that's really close to our hearts at Microsoft, both as an organization and culturally as an organization, but there's a lot of individuals that really care about that as well. And, hopefully you'll think I'm one of them. So thinking about how we engage every learner in a diverse classroom, I want to take you through and show you some of these stats, and these are Australian stats. First of all, up to 50% of instructional time can be lost to managing students' needs, including assistive technology. Now, I don't mean that managing their needs is not important. What I mean is if we could get that out of the way first, we can be focusing more on the teaching and learning, right? And more on the learning going on in the classroom. Virtually 100% of schools in Australia have students with identified learning difficulties enrolled. So this is all of us, it's everyone. About 20% of students in Australian schools require inclusive education support. So that's about 1 in 5, right? So that means that a large cross section of your classes and the students that you work with are going to be needing that extra support. And then lastly, approximately 25% of Australian students are from a language background other than English. I really like this graphic here because I think it does a really good job of demonstrating the difference between equality and equity. I realize you've probably seen it before, remembering that you can download these slides as well if you want to access these and use these in your own presentations. Nevertheless, I really like this one and wanted to share it with you. So let's talk about toys. What is the best-selling toy of all time? Now, a lot of people like to say things like Lego, some people even come in with video games and other things like that. Actually, the best-selling toy of all time is apparently the Rubik's Cube. All right, now the Rubik's Cube, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of trouble doing this. I could never actually do it properly, but there are people in the world that can do it very, very fast. All right, and you may have seen that documentary on Netflix where they talk about these people that can do it really fast. Now, there's people that can do it fast because they memorize algorithms. There's people that can do it really fast because of pattern recognition. There's all different ways that people can do it. I don't know about you, but what I used to do is I used to use a screwdriver and I used to pop this middle piece right here. I would pop that out and then the whole thing would fall apart and I'd put it back together. But trust me, it didn't happen in less than 30 seconds. Nevertheless, the point I want to make is that there are a lot of people out there that can do this really, really well. Now, I was told a story about a computer programmer who apparently is totally blind and yet can do the Rubik's Cube in less than 30 seconds. Now, when I present this presentation to teachers, I usually say to them, how do you think this this programmer is going to do with a tool like this. And I was actually told once that he could do it in regardless of being blind because of pattern recognition, etc. But nevertheless, I want you to suspend disbelief, and I want you to sit with me thinking that if someone was blind and they're unable to do that Rubik's Cube, how would we ever know that they have those skills? So sometimes what we do is we will create unique tools or specialized tools, right? So what I've got here is I've got a Rubik's Cube that's actually got Braille, all right? So it's white, there are no colors, but it's got the Braille symbols on it. Now, the problem with a tool like that is it actually excludes people who can't read Braille. So a moment ago, what we had with our traditional Rubik's Cube is that people that were blind were unable to demonstrate their ability. But then when we go into the specialist tool, we find that the mainstream, and I put that in air quotes, are unable to do it as well, right? Because they're unable to read Braille, etc. So what we've got is a tool something like this. So what we can see here is we've got a Rubik's Cube. We've still got the traditional colors, red, green, yellow, blue, etc. But we've got raised symbols, right? So that all the red ones have an X on them, all the yellow ones have 3 small dots, all the green ones have like a T symbol. So you can actually feel the colors or feel the differentiation of the different colors on the Rubik's Cube. So now what that means is blind people can do the Rubik's Cube using that one. Sighted people can do the Rubik's Cube using that one. But people with things that we maybe didn't even think about, like color differentiation issues, for example, can now actually do the Rubik's Cube as well. All right, so that's what we think about when we think about universal design. Now, when we look at something like the iPad, and remembering I work for Microsoft, but I'm not going to say horrible things about the iPad. I really enjoy my iPad when I'm reading. Okay, I use it a lot for reading. And anyone who's used the iPad will know that, yes, there are some fantastic accessibility features built in, but it tends to imitate traditional text, all right? So if you're using the Books app or you're using the Kindle app, it tends to imitate traditional text. So if you're challenged by a book, you're also going to be challenged by using some of these tools when you're using them on the iPad. So instead what we do, and as I said before, iPad do this as well, but we do this very well at Microsoft, is we think about universal design. That is to make our tools far more inclusive for people right across the spectrum. But there's another thing called universal design for learning. And universal design for learning is where we take our learning engagements and our assessments and we make those more accessible as well. Now, as I said, this isn't going to be a deep dive into universal design for learning today, but I do want to show you a nice little video, which is actually made in conjunction with the NDCO, or at least they've got the rights to it. So I'm going to show you this video now and talk to you a little bit about universal design for learning.
Universal design for learning. This animation is adapted with permission from AHED, Association for Higher Education Access and Disability, Ireland. Imagine you went into a big clothes store and all that was on sale was one type of outfit, in one size, with no thought given to different individual body shapes or personalities. That would be silly, right? Expecting everyone to be able to fit into the same size and express themselves in the same colour and style. Yet in many cases, that's exactly what is happening in our education system. When it comes to learning, variability is the rule, not the exception. And our education campuses are now grappling with the demands of an increasingly diverse cohort of learners, with increasing numbers of international students, students from different cultural and socio-economic backgrounds, mature students, and students with disabilities. Despite this, training and assessment strategies are often designed for the mythical average learner, and learners are expected to engage and learn on the same terms. Not enough flexibility is built in at the design stage to give all students equal opportunities to learn in ways that play to their own strengths. So, how can our organisations respond to these challenges? Enter Universal Design for Learning, or UDL for short. UDL is an educational framework that guides the design of learning goals, materials, methods and assessments, as well as the policies surrounding these training and assessment requirements with a diversity of learners in mind. The framework was developed by US organisation CAST and is based on research in the field on neuroscience. It promotes 3 core principles for educators to build into their teaching practice, calling on them to provide students with multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. The framework includes a set of guidelines on how to turn these principles into practice. For example, by fostering collaboration with the introduction of group work with clear goals, roles, and responsibilities. By using different types of media to support learning and ensuring that all materials are accessible. By providing a choice of assessment instruments while maintaining robust learning outcomes. You are probably already including some UDL elements in your practice without realising it, and there is much more to explore. So don't be afraid to let Universal Design for Learning give you a new lens through which to look at your teaching and learning practice and help you better reach all of your students. For more information, visit www.adset.edu.au. This animation was developed for the Disability Awareness Supporting Students in VET resource. For more information, go to www.disabilityawareness.com.au.
Okay, so universal design talks about the why of learning. That is the engagement, right? So we want to see purposeful, motivated learners stimulating interest and their motivation for learning. The other thing is it's the what of learning, so representation. For resourceful, knowledgeable learners present information and content in different ways. And then lastly is the how of learning, or those strategic networks, action and expression. So for strategic goal-directed learners, differentiate the ways that students can express what they know. So when we think about universal design for learning, there's this framework here that we as lecturers should be applying. And when we think about things like engagement is talking more about the culture of the classroom, right? And making sure that things like autonomy, authenticity, relevance are all, highly valued. And also thinking about making sure that our goals and objectives and that we've got good feedback, etc. Facilitating personal coping skills and strategies, etc. It's about making sure that the environment of the classroom facilitates learning. But when we look at representation and action and expression, that's more when we start to think about things that technology could help us with. All right, so things like customizing the display of information, alternatives for auditory information, alternatives for visual information. Also things like clarifying vocab, syntax, mathematical texts, languages, okay, multiple languages and facilitating that, multiple media, etc. So in the way that we actually present, we need to make sure that we're utilizing these kinds of structures. But then when we think about action and expression, it's where we think about things like varying the methods for response and navigation, right? Optimizing access to tools and assistive technologies, multiple tools for construction and composition, etc. And that's where the technology actually gets quite strong. And we're going to look at that over our series of workshops, not just today, but over a series of workshops. We're going to see how the Microsoft tools can actually help you meet a lot of these criteria. So key questions to consider when planning lessons, all right? Think about how the learners will engage the lesson. Does the lesson provide options that can help the learners with those things there on the screen? Think about how information is presented, all right? And then think about how the learners are expected to act strategically and express themselves, all right? And there you can see I've got udlguidelines.cast.org for you to download, but you can also grab these slides and have a look. Now, I want to talk to you about how I would have felt as a teacher if someone had come along and said this to me. I've already got a class full of people, I've got a curriculum that I'm trying to teach, etc. And now all of a sudden someone's coming along and telling me, oh, by the way, Troy, you've got to do all these other things as well. And I get it. It's going to make you feel overwhelmed, and it did for me as well. But the good thing is Universal design for learning not only is a great framework, but we at Microsoft have got the tools to help you meet that without feeling too overloaded. So the first thing we want to talk about is building a foundation for success. Inclusive education gives tools, inclusive education tools gives more students personalised access to their curriculum, optimize educator time and improving learning outcomes. That's what we want to do for you using the inclusive classroom. Now, the first thing that we talk about is this pillar over here. Students increase independence and experience a reduction of stigma. That is that they're using the same software and the same devices as everybody else in the classroom or in the lecture. All right, we're not talking about specialized technology, although 100% we welcome that if that's what's needed. But we want to make sure that you as educators are more empowered to engage every learner. All right, so the technology is not a burden. We want to optimize your time. The technology works and it's on and able to do what you want it to do. And then lastly, at Microsoft, we want to help you as an institution build a reputation as a positive place that promotes equity and inclusion. In other words, by making this available to your students and even to your staff, the institution becomes a more equitable place. At Microsoft, we break accessibility down into these 6 areas. You may have a different map that is, it maps it out in a sort of a different way. Nevertheless, we talk about learning, visual, hearing, mobility, neurodiversity, and even into mental health. Now, at Microsoft, when we talk about the inclusive classroom, we're actually talking about these 4 areas. All right, and next week or the next session, I should say, we're going to talk about reading support 100%. That's what we're going to focus on. The week after, we're going to talk about writing support and how the Microsoft tools can support you and your students with writing. We'll take a very brief look at maths as well, and we'll spend quite a lot of time also on speaking and listening, support for the deaf, EAL, etc. Now, if you want to do some of your own learning around UDL, then please jump into that course, which is available here for you when you get these slides. So that little link down here, you'll be able to click on that and that'll take you into a really nice UDL intro course if this is something new for you. Okay, so now what I want to talk to you about, though, is I want to talk to you about shoes. What do you think is the average shoe size for men in the world? No, it's not that I'm being exclusive of women. It's just by talking about men's size, because I actually do know this. All right. So believe it or not, the men's shoe size is 10.5. That is the world's average for shoes. But what would happen if we started only making size 10.5 shoes? Well, as you could imagine, this is what would happen. We would actually miss what most people need. And why? Well, it's because very few people are, in fact, the average. In fact, this is what we call the myth of the average. Now, we talk about the myth of the average because the average is a conceptual term. It's a statistical term, and it's not something that necessarily exists in the real world. You know, we often think that if we just sort of hit the average, we're hitting most people. But that example I just gave you for shoes just shows that that's not the case. What we actually need for something like shoes is we need various sizes, right? But we need various styles as well for different contexts. I need different shoes for running, for when I go dancing, for when I'm walking, for when I'm, sitting around home watching television. We all have different needs. We all have different desires depending on our context. So in education, there's this term, which is differentiation. And as a teacher, it used to really frustrate me because it meant that I, as a teacher, was responsible for making sure that all my lessons met all my students' needs. So the onus was on me to differentiate. So for example, I had to make specific resources for students with low vision, or I had to make special, accommodations for students that maybe had, hearing issues or dyslexia, etc. And it put a lot of onus onto me. And again, there's that picture of a teacher again going, oh, who has time to differentiate, right? I barely had time to do all the basics of my job, let alone create special resources for all the students that I touch in a day. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I'm saying teachers, lecturers, academics can actually feel quite overloaded. But there's this other term, which has come around in education a lot these days, and that is personalisation. And while seemingly the same as differentiation, it is somewhat different, because personalisation doesn't put the onus on the teacher, but on the learner. So the student personalises their own learning and their own education experience, and the onus is no longer so much on the teacher. Yes, the teacher, the academic, the tutor must still be able to facilitate personalisation and make it available to their students, but ultimately they don't decide what this looks like. All right, it's up to the student to be able to do this themselves, and that's why we call it personalisation. So the onus is taken off the teacher and put instead on the student. But the institution, the class, the culture of the classroom, etc., still has to facilitate that that personalisation. All right, so here's what you came for, to look at what do we do in the Microsoft space. All right, so there's this place called ease of access. If you're on a Windows 10 device, it is called ease of access. If you're on a Windows 11 device, if you're one of those lucky people that's already on Windows 11, then it's called accessibility. But most of us are on Windows 10, so I'm going to take you through and show you at a Windows 10 idea. So it's called ease of access. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up my settings area on my device. Now how did I do that? I just click on my my Windows button on my keyboard, or the Windows button on my start menu, and then I just look for settings, okay, which is just that traditional little settings wheel, and then I open up the settings area here. Now you can see most of what I need to do to play with my system and to make it more, you know, the way I want it lives here. But everything that you need to make your device more accessible lives over here in ease of access. Windows 11, it's called accessibility. All right, so it's either called ease of access or accessibility. So just keep an eye out for that. Now, when I click on that, what happens is it actually opens up the ease of access center, or the accessibility center, where everything that I need to make my device more accessible is in the one space. Now, what I mean by that is, once upon a time, you remember, I used to have to go over here to fix my mouse, and over here to fix my picture, and down here to, you know, to fix sound. Everything was in different places, but we've put it all in the one space, ease of access. Now, we've got three main categories within ease of access. We've got vision, we've got hearing, and we've got interaction. Now, a lot of people don't know this exists, right? A lot of your students don't know it exists. Perhaps you didn't know it existed either, and a lot of carers and families don't know it exists. So we need to introduce our students to this to help them to personalize their devices, all right? Now, first of all, we look at vision, okay? So everything that I need to make my device more visually accessible is here. And let's go through and have a look at some of these. So the first one is display. All right, now you can see when I click on display, we've got the ability to make text bigger. Now notice how that is trying to be more intuitive. Instead of saying to you font size and talking about, you know, 12, 14, 28, etc., it just says make text bigger. And it's got this little slider tool here that I can be dragging my text backwards and forwards, seeing it at the size that I want. And when I get it to the size that I want, I click apply, and then all the text on my device is going to be bigger. But everything, excuse me, over here, we've got making everything bigger. All right, so that's talking about the entire screen basically being sort of zoomed out a little bit for us. So that's our headings, you know, mouse point, everything basically is made bigger. Now, again, we can do that here, making it, you know, 100%, 200%, 300%, etc. in there for you. I have the ability to make everything brighter and darker as well. I also have the ability to turn my animations in Windows on and off. You know, when you open up a screen and it sort of pops open, etc. Sometimes those animations can actually be distracting to people depending on what sort of challenge they have. So being able to turn those off and on is really important. The transparencies as well, maybe a little bit hard for you to see, but the transparencies, for example, can sometimes hide some of our text, etc. So being able to turn that on and off is really important. Also our scroll bars right over here, so making sure that people can see them at all times, it can be important. Notifications as well. How long do you want your notifications to stay on the screen? All right, so for some of us very quick is good enough, but for others we may actually want them to be on the screen longer. And also turning off that desktop background image as well, because sometimes that can get in our way of differentiating text over the top. I can change my mouse in here as well. You can see I've got it as a nice big teal color. That's the way I like it because I do a lot of demonstrations, etc. But nevertheless, we can change our mouse, our pointer size as well as the color. We've got the ability to also change our text cursor as well. So that's in there for you to do. Also magnifier, all right? So being able to have magnification over a portion of the screen and hover it like a magnifying glass over the top of the screen can actually be really important for people. So that's there as well. The one that I really like though is the color filters. And the color filters are great because, as we know, people have trouble differentiating some sort of colors. So we can invert the colors, we can turn it all into grayscale, and we can also have grayscale inverted. But the one that I really like that I didn't know was here for the longest time is the color blindness filter. So my son recently found out that he's got slight red-green color blindness, and so he's able to actually turn that on within Windows. And what Windows will do is if there are that red-green or that blue-yellow color distinction, it will actually separate those colors more and make them more distinct for people that are living with that color blindness. High contrast is in there as well as narrator. Now, remembering that narrator is definitely on par with tools such as JAWS now. Usually we find people that are sort of, they're embedded with JAWS, they love JAWS, they can stick with it. But people that are new to a screen reader can jump in and use Windows 10 Narrator, which is free with Windows. We've also got the hearing settings over here as well, okay? So making your device easier to hear by turning up the volume, of course, but also mono audio. So for example, if I was hard of hearing or deaf in one ear, I might be missing half the sounds that are coming out my device. Or maybe situationally, I've just got one headset earpiece, for example. Being able to turn that on and off is key. Also showing our audio alerts visually, all right, is in there as well. So you can actually set that. The other thing is that closed captions, okay, so having those closed captions, but not just being able to turn them on and off, but also making sure that they are in a way that can be seen, okay, so things like size and style and transparency and color, making sure that they're able to be seen. The other thing that we have is we have interaction. So things like dictate. Now, dictate is very powerful in Windows and also in Office, and we're going to explore that in a later session. But you can jump in and have a look at that and have a bit of a play around with that. Also setting the keyboard, setting keys, sticky keys and hotkeys, etc. But also whether we want an on-screen keyboard or a hardware keyboard in there as well. Our mouse settings are there, and also eye gaze or eye control is now native to Windows 10. So if you've got that hardware, you don't need special software. It's actually just plug and play into Windows as well. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And it's really important that you introduce that to your students and also to your colleagues. So I want to throw in a little bit of a reflection point here and ask you to think about these. How does ease of access or accessibility support personalization for your students? All right, so think about the ways that you could see that this could be used by some of the students you work with. But then the next question is, how do you intend to introduce ease of access to your students, right? Can't just sort of throw it over the fence and hope that they find it, but actually being intentional about showing them, here's what it is and here's what it can do. Very similar to what I've done for you today, can be a game changer for some of your kids. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is the Disability Answers Desk. Now, the way to find this, and probably the easiest way to find this, is just go into your favorite search engine and just type in Microsoft Disability Answer Desk. That's probably the easiest and best way to find it. And when you do, you'll come to this page here, the Disability Answers Desk. Now, I want to point out a few things to you. First of all, It's the one-stop shop for all things Microsoft accessibility, all right? So if you want to visit the Microsoft accessibility site, if you want to look at accessibility specifically around Office, specifically around Windows, or if your institution is on Teams, specifically around Teams, all right? Now, those are 4 really key links for you to access. There's quick solutions there as well. We've got video support, okay? So you can go through our self-help videos and look at what we've got on our accessibility YouTube page as well. But the most important thing I want to draw your attention to is this phone number over here. So it's what's called the Disability Answers Desk, okay? And it's 1-800-280-300. That's 1-800-280-300. I sound like I'm doing a commercial. But it's available from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. It is a real person on the end of the line, and you can ask them your Windows and Office accessibility questions. All right, so it's not a help desk. I can't open my Word documents, etc. It's actually specifically for questions around Windows and Office accessibility support. So if you're on a Mac or an iPad and you're using Office, 100% you can still ring this number. All right, so it's a real person on the end of the line. Can't guarantee it's going to be any sort of accent, but I can tell you it's a real person. All right. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is when that's closed, there is a 24/7 chat as well, where you can get in there and have a text-based chat with people and be asking your questions. Okay. So again, how do we find this? We went into your favorite search engine, look up the Microsoft Disability Answers Desk. You'll come to this page here. Just make sure that you're on the Australian page, okay? And there's the phone number there, and there's the chat link as well. I also want to remind you, as I did at the beginning, that I have a YouTube page, and you can get your my videos, I should say, at aka.ms/TroyYT. When you grab these slides, you can get a direct link to the Disability Answers Desk, to the Microsoft Accessibility YouTube channel, to Microsoft Accessibility on Twitter. These are all direct links that will work when you download these, and a couple of ebooks talking about some of the really cool stuff that Microsoft are doing in that space. Now, how do you get those slides? Again, just go into your favorite browser at aka.ms/NDCO. That's aka.ms/NDCO. I'd also invite you to stay connected with me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook. Just do a search for Troy Waller. Look for this picture. That's my avatar there. That's how you know that it's me. The reason why I'm asking you to connect with me is because I push out information around accessibility and accessibility in education all the time through those channels. All right. So if you're connected with me, it's going to turn up in your feed, etc. All right. Now, lastly, what I want to do is I want to show you a video about Windows 11, because Windows 11 is just about to be released, and by the time you watch this video, it may in fact have already been released. But we're doing some really good stuff with accessibility, and we're even claiming Windows 11 is our most accessible version of Windows ever. So I'm going to show that video to you now, and hopefully you get a bit excited about what's coming.
We certainly hear that there are things that we can do better and gaps that we need to close. We don't just want to stop there. We want to really push beyond closing gaps to delivering that delight across the board.
No matter what your abilities are, to be able to use Windows like everyone else.
Accessibility on Windows used to be called ease of access. We talked to people in our research studies and we're like, do you know what this means? And people were like, no, I don't know.
One of the things that we did is we changed the icon.
And the most important thing is that people could discover the things that would help them use Windows better.
You can't just go into it assuming you know who you're designing for.
In the accessibility community, there is a saying, nothing about us without us.
The only way to solve these problems is by integrating deeply with the community of people that we're trying to serve.
We heard that contrast themes were kind of like a hammer.
The aesthetics shouldn't have to be compromised just because you are someone who has light sensitivity. We are introducing them with new, beautiful colorways, a range of different contrast intensities.
We thought about, hey, there's a student who might have light sensitivity in a classroom and there's a cart of machines, and when they boot up, does their device look different than others?
We don't want accessibility to be an othering experience.
What's really unique about the startup sound, for some people with no vision, that's what they rely on to know that the computer's awake.
The difference between the sounds is that they will follow the visual personality of windows. So a person who is blind can actually enjoy the same difference of those light and dark themes audibly.
It's really humbling to be able to see the impact that we're going to have in people's lived experiences. When someone with a disability starts using this new version of Windows, I hope that they feel a sense of belonging.
Okay, so that's it for our first of a series of webinars and workshops around using the Microsoft tools in the inclusive classroom. Next time, we're going to have a look at reading support. All right, so please come back, jump into that. I'm going to show you some really cool tools, things like Immersive Reader, etc. You're going to love it. So I'll see you next time. My name was Troy. I'm from Microsoft Australia Education, and thanks for being a part of today.